Welcome to the Frontline Herbalism podcast with your host Nicole Rose from the Solidarity Apothecary. This is your place for all things plants and liberation. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Frontline Herbalism podcast. This is the 7th episode in the series all about the Medical Self-Defense Network. So if you haven't listened to any of the other episodes, the first one talks about what is MSDN, what work are they doing around the world. And the second episode, we dive into some of the political principles around self-defense. So this is episode 7 and it's an interview with Alexis from France. He is a street medic who's active in different movements and is sharing some of the horrific tendencies and changes in the police force in France, the weapons they're using that are literally killing people, and how to respond to those as a medic. We talk about how medics are organizing in France, different training, some of the challenges involved, especially with the kind of increase in weaponry, and just generally how does this work fit in this kind of framework of medical self-defense. And one of the things I love that Alexis says is, if you can't treat your wounded, you will lose the battle. And I think that's really important in terms of the politics of care and how we're looking after ourselves in these kind of struggles for liberation, which are often, directly contending with the state. So I hope you enjoy this episode. It was really fun to record, and please check out the links in the show notes for the resources mentioned. And listen to the next episode, which is a recording of a text that was written all about kind of practical responses to this kind of weaponry that the police are using in terms of street medics. So it will be super useful for anyone doing this kind of work around the world. All right, take care. Hey, thank you so much for joining the call. Please, can you introduce yourself, your pronouns, and any political affinities or projects or anything else you'd like to share about yourself?
Hi. So I'm Alexis, pronounced he, him. I'm from MSDN, and I have a kind of anarcho-communist background.
Okay, perfect. And are you part of a collective that is doing street medic work, or is it something you do kind of independently?
Well, for now, it's mostly something I do independently. I was part of a team before, and I'm in between two teams. I'm trying to reach out for teams in the nearest city where there is a lot of demonstrations happening. And so right now I'm kind of in the middle of something, of two different things. But I'm mostly doing it independently.
Okay, nice. And what kind of work does it involve? The street medic work or the riot medicine, or I don't know how you phrase it. What kinds of injuries are you responding to regularly?
Well, usually it's a lot of light injuries, like bruises, small open wounds, shrapnels, these kind of things, or tear gas. But we also very often face heavier injuries because of the weapons that are used by the cops in France, like massive bleeding, big open wounds, part of a limb, or even an eye torn off.
Wow, yeah. I think obviously everything has been really kicking off in France, right, recently. And I think for us in England, we always have a bit of a crush on France of just your street resistance is so phenomenal. There's, I do lots of medic work at demos and it's just hardly anything ever happens. There was a riot a couple of years ago in Bristol, and it was the one time I had a terrible sinus infection. So I was at home with a temperature and I missed the whole thing. But I can see from a distance in France, how there's just this quite intense level of violence from the police. And I know police violence happens absolutely everywhere. That's the purpose of police. But can you share a little bit about the kinds of weapons police are using in France?
Well, yeah, sure. There's different types of weapons. The most common, and I think the most broader used by different police in different countries in Europe, would be tear gas and the sticks. But there's also a lot more weapons that they use in France. Also because they're very policing technique, if it's right, is to maintain the crowds at a distance. and to avoid as much contact as they can. Even though we saw in the last years special units appearing to really go into contact, but mostly like the police forces, the different police forces in France have this strategy and tactics to maintain the crowds at a distance. And so they use more and more weapons. They have this explosive grenade. We call it blast effect because it's creating a blast, and it's very, very strong. There's shrapnel coming out of it. It's basically like a war grenade, but just a little bit less powerful. They also have like kind of mix of tear gas grenade and explosive grenade. They have a sting ball grenade, which launch a bunch of rubber blocks around. They have these rubber bullets. Before they use kind of flash balls, like round balls of plastic or rubber, but they found it not not working as good as they would. So they created another weapon with I think it's a Swiss company, and it's kind of a very large and thick rubber bullet that creates more damage when it hits the body. So the ammunition absorbs less impact, so it's more impact for the body. And they also have in the recent riots in the suburbs, they even used police forces that are not normally used for maintaining like law and order in the streets, and more for hostages situation or terrorist attack situations. And they used two weapons that we call here, that are called bean bags, and it's like small, like fabric bags somehow filled of plastic or mostly lead small balls. So they use more and more things, and they also bring weapons to the circle of maintaining order in the streets that are normally not used in this field of action. And so it's growing more, I would say, as the police violence is growing.
And like, where are these weapons kind of coming from? Like, are they like coming from like the military or like private industry, like promoting them? Like, is there any explanation other than just like how the state constantly wants to defend itself? But like, is there any explanation in terms of like the increasing use of force and these different weapons?
Well, yeah. So yeah, first it's mostly private industry. I mean, some of these weapons, like the more recent what we call flashball, but are not actually flashballs, but mostly kind of thick rubber bullets. It's coming from the military somehow because it was created, if I'm not mistaken, by a Swiss company, as I said, and it was seen by French police officers, like high-ranked officers, as too dangerous to be used in France. So they tested it they gave a bunch of it to the Israeli Defense Forces, Israeli army, and they tested it on Palestinian people. And they found it very efficient. So they brought back like the debrief of like the use of these weapons on Palestinian people. And then they said, okay, we can use it on our citizens, on French people, or actually. And it's also something that is used in the US a lot. We can see it in a lot of demonstrations. And so it's coming kind of from the military, but it's a private company at the beginning. As for the explosive grenades, like the blast effect and the sting ball grenade, it's also kind of coming from the military, but it's weapons that are specifically developed for police forces. And I think we can explain this by as you said, it's kicking off in France lately, but it's kind of always kicking off in France. So I wouldn't say that we have a political class that is worse than other countries. Not at all, actually. It's far worse in other countries. But I think the French people have a tendency to express when they're not happy about the politics and express it in a very radical way somehow. And what happened also in the last 10 years, let's say, is more and more destruction of um, social health work of everybody, everything that is building the society as we know it. So the condition of workers, the wages, whatever, health workers, building workers, whatever. And so everything was destroyed slowly and slowly, and it's still the case. And not talking also about like how the police is acting in the suburbs or things like this. And so it's really something that is growing more and more. And there were a lot of social movements in the last decade. So they also introduced new weapons in this context. Um, because I think at one point people were just so pissed that they start to just don't care about what the police was using against them in terms of weapons and ammunition. And we saw it during the Yellow Vest, for example. Most of the people involved in this movement were regular people. Most of them were not even going to demonstration before, maybe. And what we saw is that they put police in a very, very difficult situation a lot of times and in a lot of places in the country. So they brought new weapons, and I think it's this kind of growing violence and growing discontent of the people that led the police forces and the government to increase the use of weapons, which again, most of them are meant for defense for the police officers, like the sting ball grenades, for example, the one who throw rubber blocks around. They are created for the situation. As for example, a group of police officers is surrounded by demonstrations or black bloc or whatever, what they call individuals or like hostile individuals, and they are supposed to throw it on the ground to like break through and open a path to be able to escape. But what we see in real situations on the ground is that it's never used as it's meant to be. And that's why there's also so much people wounded in the demonstration in France with these weapons or the others. It's because they never really used the weapons and ammunition as it's written on the book, let's say. So yeah, increasing violence on the side of the demonstrations, of course, is making increasing violence in the side of police officers also, not to justify that it's or say it's good or whatever, but it's kind of the snake biting its own tail. It's a never ending process because the more the police is violent, the more the people in front of them will react violently to kind of react to defend themselves. And the more they react, the more the police will say, you see, we have to react more. And so it's also the kind of principle of, I don't know how to say in English, but graduate in the level of answer of violence of that you put to answer the crowd. And what we see also is that it's never really done as written on the book. Again, they start the the fight most of the time to prevent a fight. So it's of course a kind of weird dynamic, but it creates a lot of violence in the streets.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense, and I think that's why like this kind of political framework of like self-defense is really important, right? Of when the police are introducing these weapons, which like you said, they are, being experimented on with people in Palestine. It's just absolutely horrific. Like, can these weapons like be life-threatening? Like, has anyone been killed by their use in France? Do you know?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's really something that is uh, very sadly quite common in France. Just as a reminder, a lot of these grenades, for example, that we are talking about are classified in France as A2, which is literally war weapons. It's not like war weapons. It is like real war weapons. So it's not the weapons that the military, French military, for example, would use on in their operations, but it's classified in the same category. So less powerful maybe, but still same category. And very sadly, yes, a lot of people died from police weapons. A lot of people lost their eyes, their hands, their foot, or like ability to walk correctly or to, I don't know, a lot of people were shot in the lungs. So very often that a rib is broken and pierces a lung or something. Yeah, a lot of people every year, so at least a couple, I would say a couple dozen people die every year from police weapons. Most of these people are, again, living in the suburbs or in areas of the cities that the power would describe as like less important, or like the people from immigration or people of color, and that are more a target for police violence than white people. Of course, I mean it's now widely known. But yeah, a lot of people died. A lot of people are in every demonstration. There is a lot of wounded, and every single one, and a lot of people die every year.
Wow, and like how are like you all responding to it as medics? Like I know you mentioned you're kind of in between collectives and stuff. Like I wondered, like are medics kind of organized in any way in France? Like do you have like gatherings or trainings together, or is it just like much more autonomous? Yeah, like how are medics kind of like responding to this in France? Like how are they organizing? Like are they working together in any way? Like do you have any kind of skill sharing or training? Because you know, as a movement it's like a really huge thing to respond to, right? And I just wondered what it looks like for you, and also like in France, like more generally.
Well, in terms of organization, I would say kind of new in the game because I was out of it for a long time, also for travels and different reasons. So I'm mostly back into street medic because of MSDN actually. And so now I'm trying to reach out to different groups and collectives. But yeah, I'm trying to create a link between what comrades are doing in my place since a very long time and MSDN, uh, which means I'm trying to reach out to networks that are existing in France, uh, mailing lists or signal groups or whatever, but different networks are existing. Some are about medicine or like medical workers at all. So it can be doctors, it can be Riot medicine, it can be a lot of things. But also there is in every city, in every bigger city, there is a at least one team of street medics. In the city I work, for example, there is I think two different teams of street medics. It's not a lot considering like the amount of people, but yeah, it's still something. A lot of comrades also are in different networks. Some are managing an ambulance, an autonomous ambulance, for example. Some are giving education every now and then to different people. They actually, I have friends where I live who trained different street medic teams in different cities with a very good training that I myself attended some a couple years ago. Um, it's still, I would say, a bit disconnected. There are networks that connect people from different parts of the country, but it's still kind of disconnected. And one of the things I would like to do also with MSDN is to try to connect it all together, at least with all the people that want to connect together and see the meaning of it. I'd like to try to make a kind of common room for everybody and invite them to the network, of course. As I think it was explained in the first podcast how it works and how we work as a network. So maybe there's no need to come back on this topic, but yeah, there's a lot of skill shares, for example, but it stays on the level of street medic. And even if in France it's quite a high level, I would say, still sometimes I'm afraid that we jump to this kind of more that we jump from riot medicine to wounds that are more related to war medicine. And so I think we saw the increase of police brutality and violence and weapons in the last decade. And I think we are heading towards something that will more look like war medicine. So I think there's a need also to prepare this in advance for people to be ready. And I think it's one of the roles that MSDN can cover in France also.
Wow, yeah. I mean, yeah, it does feel like I recorded the interview with the comrade in the so-called US in East Tennessee, and like, yeah, we were talking about gunshots and how it's like super common, like on demos or just in general life. And like, yeah, it really does feel like across the world, like we're moving in this direction of like more and more kind of organized violence, like from the state or from fascists, and like needing to respond to that with like more grassroots medical knowledge around responding to these injuries, right? So one of my favorite moments with a French street medic was last year. It was last year. Went to Poland when the invasion started in Ukraine, and was just kind of doing like a recce for this Ukraine Herbal Solidarity project, and yeah, got to hang out with some medics from France, and the friend was saying that basically like they would kind of like sometimes come up against like other medic infrastructure, for example, medics who were in the yellow vest movement, who were like, you know, doctors or paramedics, for example, like working in like state healthcare. And these medics like didn't want to work with them because they kind of classified them as not like qualified in their like professional context. But this comrade had like, you know, like many years of experience, like huge amounts of self-education. They'd gone to like all sorts of trainings. And a friend of theirs actually made a joke, like made like a riot medicine diploma, like to stick on their wall. And I just thought that was like really cute and really funny. And, you know, like I understand the complexities around like medical training, and, you know, like skill sharing and like, you know, safety. Like I understand the different elements, but I just wondered like what your thoughts are in terms of this kind of like hierarchy or kind of professionalization of medicine, and like where we fit as kind of like more kind of like anarchist street medics, for example.
Yeah, we definitely can feel sometimes, even if not in the streets, sometimes in discussions with, like you said, like more formal or state workers, health workers, or at least in the official network of health care. We can definitely feel sometimes this kind of, they look at us from up, and they say we don't have a diploma or something like this. But I remember one time I was discussing with a man who was a doctor in a hospital, and he was telling me that it's very dangerous what I do because I basically have no health diploma. I'm not paramedic or whatever. And he said it's very dangerous to treat people if you don't have the knowledge and the diploma that can attest that you have this knowledge and stuff. And when we talked further about this topic, I said that I was also doing medical work in a war zone, and then it switched kind of. It switched from like you don't know what you're doing, it's dangerous, from like holy fuck, I never done that and I wouldn't be able to do it. So it would probably take a lot of courage to do that. And well, maybe you're qualified after all. So I don't know. Probably I'm not that much qualified. I would say, but I think I'm qualified enough to work. And it's the case of a lot of comrades. And it's true that it's kind of a gray zone in France. I would say, because you can, for example, I'm qualified enough to do some work, not all the work in medical health work or whatever, but I can help. And if someone in front of me in the street have a problem, and I just go without helping, I can be um, I can have problems with the justice for non-assisting someone who's in danger, which I think is kind of normal because you would need to assist everybody if they have a problem. But if I do, then I can be also charged for illegal practice of medicine. So it's a kind of gray zone, and I think it's not only in France. I was talking with a German comrade not long ago, and he said it's kind of the same thing in Germany, or something similar. And I think it's also something that is related to how we as MSDN see self-defense. Is that okay? We don't have the diploma, we don't have the regular courses and educations done about medicine work or health work, or but I think we can still do a lot of things if we are able to focus. And you know, most of the things that I've done in the past decade were not so hard to do, but as soon as you know how to do, but were mostly very stressful. And so I think uh, as soon as you can manage stress and you are trained to different situations, then it makes the whole thing easier also to do, because like taking care of someone even with like a broken limb or a very big open wound or massive bleeding, it's not so complicated. You just need to know what you're doing, be sure that you're doing the good thing, not like make the situation worse. And I think it's also something that everyone could do. And there's also a lot of organizations close to the state or like more official structures in France that are uh, have the kind of objective to educate the population to first response, or the first gesture that you do if someone have like a heart attack or something. And I think it would be good to make it like very normal that everybody go through this kind of education, because then everybody can respond at least a little bit, and it makes the whole health care and medical works a lot easier if everybody can know a bit of it. But yeah, we are kind of in a gray zone. I like though this idea of the Riot medicine diploma. I think we should we should edit more of it.
Yeah, maybe MSDN can be the certification body and give them out. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, we need to look about this.
Yeah, like I think it's interesting. I was in Palestine last year and I did a podcast interview with a doctor there, and their organization they have like huge amounts of like volunteer medics who have been trained like to a really high standard to respond. But what they have tried to do as well is just like get, yeah, like you said, like as many people as possible with the skills. Like they've trained over 150,000 people in like how to respond to like gunshot wounds, for example, because they were finding people were coming like paralyzed, or they weren't getting access to higher care like fast enough, and people didn't know like about stopping the bleeding and stuff like this. So like even in the UK, like after this July 7th bombings, like many years ago now, like a lot of the underground stations were kind of like destroyed, and there were like vast amounts of casualties, and the state wouldn't approve the paramedics like going underground because they couldn't like approve that it was like safe, if that makes sense. So loads of people died, and they then created like a government strategy of like, actually we just need to train people to like stop bleeding, like using tourniquets, like using other tools like out of handbag straps or whatever. And it's like, you know, like I don't think it is so radical that like people need their own skills, right? As much as possible to like relieve pressure from systems, and also just to like build autonomy and self-defense. Like I think it's really important. And you mentioned about like this like managing stress, and I think what's interesting about like Riot Medicine or like being a medic on demos and things is like you might have someone who is like a paramedic or a doctor or something in those situations, but actually if you've spent like, you know, I've been going to demos since I was maybe like 11 years old, so if I've spent like over 20 years going to demos, like I know how the police react, like I know what happens when they try to kettle us, I've seen them break people's ribs, like I know how arrests work, I know how to de-arrest someone. And like I think you're right that like, okay, we might not have like some diploma, but actually having like basic medical knowledge and then this like skill set of like navigating a riot or a demo like is super important as well. And you can't learn that, right, other than just loads of practice and time in the sense of like, you know, regularly participating in struggle. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, sure. I think it's exactly the point. Like you need to practice to know. And even though you don't have a diploma, you can have a lot of practice and maybe a lot more than someone who have a diploma but have no practice at all. And that's the whole thing. After there's, like I said, the whole stress management and the difficult situation, trying to treat someone under grenades or something. I've not been facing this situation since a very long time in the street. But last time I was facing a very difficult situation, treating someone, trying to treat a very large wound on a leg. It was in the forest, during evictions. And yeah, it was kind of difficult because then you need to manage your own stress because you are scared and you are full of stress and emotions and you need to treat this person right and to clean the wound and stuff and to not forget a very important step of the process. But you also need to take care that a grenade will not fall on your face and maybe kill you or wound you so that you're not able to do your job anymore. And so it's this whole mix of different things that makes this street medic work very difficult because you're very often in the middle of tension. And even though you can also be at like medical points that are, um, further away from the big mess, you can still very often be inside the riot something and in the gas. So you need to manage this. But related to what you said, also, I think it's a mean of control for the state. Like the example of what happened in the US. I think it's a mean of control for the state because if we're not able to feel and care for each other, even like not professional way, but as good as we can, then we are kind of powerless. Um, because it's the whole principle of having a battle. And if you cannot treat your wounded, then you're going to lose the battle because a lot of people would be wounded and it's much more discouraging for the people on this side and everything. So if we're not able to care for each other and to heal each other, then we are facing a very, very, very difficult situation. And I think for the state, it's a very, very powerful tool of control. That's why it's also included um, in our program, let's say, of self-defense, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like just a side note of like treating our wounded, like for me, that's really like psychological, right, as well, or like emotional, in terms of like the nervous system and trauma and how like, you know, like our movements can really contribute to burnout and like state repression can really affect people. And like, yeah, there's this like whole other layer of like care in terms of like responding and tending to wounds. Um, but that is a good segue because I know that you've written this amazing kind of, it's article's probably not the right word because it's like an amazing resource, from France with gloves. And I'm going to be recording it very soon, to be published with this series. And it's kind of, you know, like an amazing overview of different weapons used and different injuries and packing lists and all sorts of stuff. But I really love the end where you write that, facing state violence, care is a political tool of self-defense and empowerment. I just wondered if you could, expand on what you mean with this statement and like how do you see care as a political tool?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I would like to thank also a lot of comrades who um, participate somehow in this, directly or indirectly to this article. Some comrades that gave me testimonies, but also comrades who have a website, a French website to list all the wounded and people who were killed by the police in every year. And they have like these very, very interesting booklets or brochures to explain how the weapons work and how to treat them and how to react and stuff. So we work together a bit, like sending emails back and forth to write this, to have their opinion and stuff. And so it was very helpful to be not totally alone on this task, because it's also very much a compilation of a lot of knowledge from different people. Um, but yeah, I think that what I meant with this sentence is that when we are facing the very state violence, which is kind of directly like it's cop violence, um, it's like I said, if we cannot take care of each other, then we are powerless to win this kind of battle, because at the end, I think it's a battle. It's something that we want freedom and we want equality, and the state says differently. And it's, as the comrade explained in the first and second episode of this podcast series, it's also it's something to take care of each other. Self-defense for us is also very much broader than just direct defense, or like physical self-defense or medical self-defense. Um, it's also like how we develop and protect ourselves as a society, as a people, and it encompasses a lot of things, from how we build our relations, how we produce food, how we defend ourselves physically from different attacks, but also like how we heal and take care of each other. And this, if we talk about MSDN, is the very much it's the first topic. So when we are facing state violence in the streets, it's because we are expressing a discontent or anger about the politics, because they are sitting in the chairs in their fancy desk, and they don't really care about what is happening on the ground, and they don't really care if they put a lot of people in the streets, or if they are starving the people. So it's also like a direct means of action to defend ourselves and to create more links between each other, because when you heal someone, it's it's obviously taking care, but it's also helping in a sense. So um, I think it empowers our movement, and it creates another kind of phase of self-defense in the society. Um, because this work, for example, that I was doing, I said I'm mostly by myself for now, but I'm part of a team. It's not a team who is doing medical work. It's a team who is giving food or drinks in the demos and putting music to light the mood. And so when I am around, I try to distribute masks and saline and this kind of small things that helps everybody to stay a bit longer in the gas, and keep the streets, keep the ground to ourselves, and occupy, let's say, the streets and the platform for longer. So in this sense, I think it's a tool of empowerment for sure, but also self-defense, because we are facing the state in some ways. And so we are able to do it more efficiently, because we can heal each other, can feed each other, and we can regain a bit of energy with the music, the food. And when we are, I don't know, when you patch a wound of someone, it can go back to, or she or they can come back to the demo and continue expressing what they want to express freely. So I think it's very important.
Amazing. Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I think what you said is really beautiful and really important. I also know that before we finish, like you're a herbalist as well, right? Or you love herbal medicine, or you like, I just wondered like how you, if you integrate herbal medicine into your street medic work at all. Um,
Um, yeah, I'm kind of a herbalist, but not so much. I would say I like a lot of practice. I have a diploma, but I like a lot of practice. I myself not include herbs in the street medicine, but some people, friends or comrades, or like some other people around me do it, and they they make this kind of creams or mostly creams, but so some materials to be used. And yeah, I think I actually always have one of these small cream pots in my backpack, in my medic backpack, against bruises and stuff like this. It's very efficient and at least it's natural. So it's a good thing to have. I think it's something that we should do more as much as possible. I mean, bandages are bandages, but in terms of cream and everything that we can use and create ourselves, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of work. So sadly, I cannot do it very efficiently because I have a lot of other jobs to maintain. But yeah, I would really love to use it more.
Okay, you've inspired me. I will do a podcast episode sometime about integrating herbal medicine into your street medic packs. And also just like a random blag, like if anyone like needs anything, like I make like a really amazing bruise ointment that we use in Calais that's like super strong, super effective. I've used it like with like literally hundreds, if not thousands of people in Calais, and it's like really amazing for those kind of acute injuries. But yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish? I just want to say this has been like really fantastic and inspiring. Actually, I had one last question, which was like, what would your advice be to someone who is like interested in like becoming a street medic or, you know, doing more kind of care work at demos or things like this? Like, what would be a good first step for someone?
Well, I would say the first thing would be to try and first see if there is people doing this job around you, and maybe if there are people, so just reach out and say you want to help and try to meet each other in person to talk about how you see the things and how you can work together. And if there's not, then maybe you need to create your own group and this would be fantastic, wherever you are. And so in this case, it's more difficult, of course, but I think there's plenty of groups also reachable on the internet or in the circles of comrades or through MSDN actually, to teach or to try to help building a group or to try to acquire the knowledge. I would be very glad to help if people want to start something and they have no local resources. I would be glad to help through MSDN. So you can go on MSDN, msdnetwork.org, and we can talk together for sure. It's my pleasure. Yeah.
Amazing. And was there anything else you'd like to share before we finish?
Well, just thank you a lot for inviting me on this podcast, and I hope my accent is not so bad. So I will do the usual joke. I would say, excuse my English, but excuse my French.
I think your accent will be very popular. Don't worry. I think it's really nice. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, speak soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Frontline Herbalism podcast. You can find the transcript, the links, all the resources from the show at solidarityApothecary.org/podcast.